Hello world of YouTube. The Saturday special for this week and next week are going to be the proverbial send-off to the year of second chances, because there were a handful of ideas that I wanted to do this year that I ended up shelving for one reason or another, but these two particular instances I feel like are the most timely to get done by the end of the year because they act as anniversaries for the respective records. And the subject of today's video was also supposed to be my channelversary special, because back in 2009 on October 28th, while I was starting my journey, 6 years prior to that, The Strokes were dropping their sophomore outing, Room on Fire. And now that saw them smoothing out some of their rougher edges without losing sight of that youthful bite, while funneling their ideas into this record that really breaks down the minutiae across the evolution of a relationship. And today, I'm going to be ranking all 11 tracks from least to most favorite and telling you why. As far as my opinions on Room on Fire itself, I think that it is a great album. I think that it's a great expansion on and showcasing that the Strokes weren't just a one-trick pony. I don't know where I'd rank it in the proverbial Strokes discography, but that's a discussion for another day. Either way, leave it a like if you're excited, and let's go ahead and get to ranking. I don't wanna change your mind. I don't wanna... You know, more so than a lot of the records I've talked about on this segment, especially recently, the bottom spot was kind of hard for me to really nail down, because while I enjoy the band picking up the pace, I don't think the slower pace on the track that ended up on the bottom spot, Under Control, is a bad song, because it, like all of the other tracks on the record's lyrics, let it shine and continue the through line and themes of, you know, exploring this relationship. And at this point in said relationship, it's a moment of acceptance. You know, you and your partner that you've drifted apart from are so far apart, and this is the point where the sunny, slower-paced groove sort of accents the potential sadness within the acceptance of moving on and knowing that you both are in your own respective fields. You know, you've accepted that you guys both had a real difference in how you wanted things to go, but that's okay. And at the end of the day, you'll be fine. And I appreciate that. I think that it's a good sentiment to express on a record like this that's wrought throughout a lot of passion and pleasure and some pain. I think that this moment of sort of semi-ennui is a good point. It's kind of weird that it comes at this point in the track listing, but I like it, and I think it's a great song. But it just ended up on the bottom because when this record does bang, it bangs pretty fucking well. The song that actually follows Under Control the way it is coming next in the ranking, because I do think that it's a good kick up in energy. A bitter-driven love song that kind of has its own catharsis by its end. I think that the lo-fi edge that adds a good fuzz to the bass and a good bite to the guitar add to some of the frustrations that could be seen in the narrator, who's really looking back on where his relationship fell apart. The songwriting just kind of hits a better emotional resolve throughout other parts of the track listing. I do think this is a great song, and it sort of sees them sort of bridging the gap between their first and second record pretty strongly with a track like this. And it's an album cut-ass song at its core, but it's a really good one, and I think that it's a nice little gem within the back half of the record. We stayed all night. Between Love and Hate, though, is a moment where I feel like a good emotional peak is reached in the album. I love the bass that kind of flirts around in the track while the narrator deconstructs the emotional pain that he saw in his partner as she broke up with him, before melting down into his own emotional sadness with a really good solo to send the song off into the sunset. This feels like that evolution of their sound into this record fully realized, and I think that it comes at a really good point in the record on top of that. It is a really strong song. Again, this record just really hits hard in some good ways. The electrifying closer, I Can't Win, sees our narrator alone at the beginning of his era by himself. However, it does so with a sense of optimism that is seen once you are fully over the end of a relationship. I think that it's got a really good solo. I think that ending this record on this good, buoyant, optimistic note, it's a strong place, especially given the pockets of passion that crop up in this. Even if it has this sort of tongue-in-cheek, downtrodden nature to it, the overall optimism of the track, I feel like, spits in the face of a lot of that and reinforces that being on your own to find your next chapter in a really, again, just optimistic sense, you know? On the opposite side of that coin, the opener, Whatever Happened, also gets the record off on equally a strong foot with a good propulsive riff that sees the band lyrically sort of introducing the relationship while also teasing the idea that it could be an allegory to their relationship with the burgeoning fame that came post Is This It? It's equally reflective while stage setting and sonically picking up where the band kind of left off while showcasing a good polish to illustrate that, yeah, they have kind of made it in a sense, and they aren't going to be quite the same band that they were in their last chapter. I think it's a great, not barn burner, but stage setter in a really good way. The penultimate track, The End Has No End, sort of sees that narrator protagonist and the last dirges of his own frustration. You know, you can see he's trying to find his footing in a world post his partner, but hasn't quite found his groove, complete with an explosive chorus that I think shakes the rafters. I like the dialogue style verses. I like the counting in the first verse, and it leads to the pre-chorus pretty well. I like the songwriting in this as a whole, and I think that as far as like building up to a nice, vibrant finale, this is a good way to do it, in my opinion. Showcasing that it may not be the end, but you're still looking for that end of sorts. As long as we can celebrate content. A track that uses a lo-fi edge to sort of act as an emotional enhancement or accent. Meet Me in the Bathroom is a point where the protagonist is reflecting on a time where he and his love interest got busy in a bathroom at an undisclosed location. The song itself is also written about Courtney, or written for Courtney Love from Julian Casablancas, but I like a lot of the passion that's seen throughout this song, or at least is reflected upon this song, and I think that putting it at this point in the track listing makes sense because it's on this sort of back-end reflection before moving on, and I think that it's a good point to sort of immediately get to following the breakup itself. It's a point where you're looking at maybe your emotional or at least sensual height in a good sort of way. It's a track that doesn't have necessarily the biggest or most particularly glamorous of choruses, but again, it's caught up in this, you know, lo-fi passion and basks in it in the best way. It's got surprise. When being in the bowels of the fish in the sea, seeking companionship, or even just something passionate, there can be this hesitation that I feel like doesn't necessarily get expressed enough in records like this, and I think that Automatic Stop is a pretty good jam that expresses that potential hesitation before diving into something that's a little more serious. I also like that this track does come earlier in the track listing to, again, further illustrate this relationship's timeline in a more chronological manner. If we're talking like laid-back grooves as well, I think that this has a very 2000s-ass groove that feels like a sort of standard at this point, but it's the Strokes sort of helping carve out that archetype here. I love the way the guitars dance around each other and how they sort of slide in and out between, you know, verse, pre-chorus, and the groovy-ass chorus. I dig this jam a lot, and I think that as far as, again, sequencing-wise, following up a track like Reptilia, it helps carry that energy while mellowing out a little bit. One of the first Strokes songs I had ever heard, Reptilia, is a fucking bop. It's got a great showcasing of that cleaner production, helping make their choruses even bigger and letting their guitars create a stage even more gargantuan. I love the bass that stays consistent and driving throughout the song. And I think that as far as creating this emotional swell that gets sort of brought back up in the back half of the record, having it sort of come here as a sort of outside observance of love from a perspective that hasn't seen it in maybe a while, is an interesting song that I think is written pretty well. It's honestly a place that I feel like some people do get when they haven't been in a relationship for a while and maybe don't have that human connection quite reaffirmed yet. They just need some time with somebody else. And I feel like this track does a good job at putting somebody in the perspective of somebody that may have gotten to that point in their life, while being a catchy-ass 2000s classic on top of it. Yeah, it's not my favorite song on here, nor is it maybe my favorite Strokes song, but I still think it's a strong one. A track that feels like it's between two people deciding if they should really be together, with one person seeming to be into the other a little bit more. This track feels like hook after hook after hook that's written. I love every catchy melody and line that the band strings together with these melodies that give those catchy lines the wings to soar throughout the skies. I think that especially following up the track that it does follow up, which is the #1 track, it feels like the post-nut clarity jam between two people sort of working through what just happened and toying with the idea of building to something more because it was such a good time. I really think that this acts as a good emotional pivot in the record, and I think is, again, just hook after hook after hook. The guitar solo on this track is catchy as hell. Just every bit of it is sugary, catchy goodness, and I love it so fucking much. 1251, though, is probably one of my favorite Strokes songs. It takes that catchiness that permeates throughout every aspect of You Talk Way Too Much with that unified bopification scene on Reptilia, but acts as the catalytic apex where the passion that seems to have been written about on Meet Me in the Bathroom is happening and unfolding right before your eyes, with a really strong guitar line and a great melody that sits underneath Julian's melody throughout the verses. I think that the lyrical detail of this illustrates that passion tenfold, and I think acts as not only the strongest jam on Room on Fire, but the point that, again, everything coalesces into the most important moment in this proverbial timeline, and acts as the strongest song on the record on top of that. I love 1251. I think it's a jam and a half, and I think that it is just a quality fucking tune that is easily my favorite on Room on Fire. And that's how I'd rank Room on Fire's track listing. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you liked this video, give it a like. If you want to see more, consider subscribing. I drop 2 to 4 vids a week depending on what I've got going on. Again, December is light. I will have 3 videos next week, but as it stands, that is the end of this one. Thank you again so very much for watching. Once again, I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.